Good afternoon, gang. A little bit after lunch hour, but time to get some intel out to you guys here. This, of course, is something that would never be reported by the Western press or anything of the sort. But and of course, you're not going to hear this out of the Russian press. But what's really going on with this whole invasion of Ukraine? What really happened? Okay. And this is some of the information that a source that you guys all know was able to give me, and then I don't want to name him to keep him out of trouble. And then also Mrs. P doing some digging, okay? And again, this is trying to get into the, how do you want to put it, the alt media in Russia, okay? But I'm hearing this from more than one source, and it all ties into a lot of the facts. Now, there is a Russian journalist, very popular, by the name of Yulia Latinova. And she had done a interview here in the last week with a Bulgarian investigative journalist and what's going on. Now, y'all know as well as I do that the former Soviet Union whole thing, okay, is corrupt. I mean, come on, Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. Why do you think Hunter was there, right? Okay. So I want to read to you here real quick a short portion of this interview. I'm going to link the interview here. Unless you, of course, understand Russian, you're not going to understand it. But Mrs. P spent the evening last night translating this important part. Okay, so I want to read it to you in English here first. So let me start with that, and you'll kind of get the idea of what's going on. So Yulia Latina, got her name wrong, Yulia Latinina. I put an ova on there for some reason. Yulia asks, do you think that Putin is capable of using nuclear weapons given how easily he seizes nuclear power plants? Grozev, who is the Bulgarian investigative reporter, replies, this was discussed back in December last year. People quite close to him told us he was ready to use tactical nuclear weapons to show them, meaning NATO. And when I asked if these weapons would be used in Ukraine, they said no. He would not go for it, as he would not be able to sell this idea to his electorate. Most likely it will be applied on NATO infrastructure, without casualties. In the early days of the war, even more data came from sources close to Putin that he would most likely go for the use of nuclear weapons if a conventional war fails. Yulia asked the next question. Did your sources name specific countries against which the use of nuclear weapons is being considered? Grozev. For the past 2 weeks, information has been coming in, and I must emphasize that these are hypotheses of people close to him, that we are talking about Poland. Yulia. When did you find out there would be a war? Big question here. Grozev. Almost 9 months ago. Sources from the security forces of Russia warned me that something terrible would happen in March of this year, that the whole country will turn into North Korea, meaning Russia. The country will be ruled by an army, and the whole country will be an army. Latinina. Why did these people warn you? Grozev. Because they understood it would end badly for Russia and for themselves. Approximately 10% of the security forces understand that this is the end of normal life. Yulia. Are your sources the FSB or the Army? Grozev. Both the FSB and the Army. Yulia. Does that mean that these people will sabotage military operations? I recently read in the Times that the Russian intelligence services have already twice passed information to Ukraine about the impending assassination attempts on Zelensky, and with their help, the attempts were prevented. Grozev. There are already examples of obvious sabotage in the ranks of Russian aviation. Pilots drop bombs 50 meters from the target, plane after plane. This is not to say that everyone does this, but there are such examples. I understand how the Russian army works, and I know a pilot cannot do this without the approval of his commander. This is factual. I've seen stories on this. Latinina. How successful was Putin in implementing the invasion plan? Grozev. The story is that Putin was given incorrect information. He was informed that the capture of Ukraine would be as easy as the capture of Crimea, that they have a wide agent network in the Army, Intelligence, and Security Service of Ukraine, that immediately after the paratroopers landed in the vicinity of Kiev, that they will be met by agents loyal to Moscow and everything will end very quickly. Latinina. Where did you get the information that Putin thought he would be met with flowers in Kiev? Grozev. We're working with hacked email. From the hacked email of employees of the State Intelligence Agency, we learned how they found and recruited their colleagues from the military structure of Ukraine. We know specific names. We know who did not accept such recruitment attempts. By the way, the funny thing is they do their recruiting in direct chats on social networks. VK. If you don't know what VK is the Russian mirror of Facebook. It looks exactly the same. Okay. They don't even use secure channels for recruiting. This is still Grozev continuing. If you remember Putin's call to the Ukraine military, remember the video a few weeks back, okay? So they overthrow Zelensky. After that, Putin would have negotiated with the military who had seized power in Ukraine. The whole world then thought that he was some kind of crazy, and I didn't think it was a legend as to what would happen in a few days. I'm wondering why this didn't happen. Now, to give you what Putin was told and how this all happened, and this kind of backs it up. Apparently, for the last 9 months or so, the FSB and the Russian army has been paying off, or supposed to be paying off, the Ukraine military chain of command, the leadership structure, to basically form a coup against Zelensky. And all these Ukrainian generals or whatever were supposed to get payoffs. They were supposed to seize control of Ukraine from Kiev. And then when the Russians came in, this was supposed to be, as our friend put it, a 3-day war. Okay, the first day there was going to be strategic airstrikes. The paratroopers would land. The second day, everybody would be greeted with flowers. And the third day, there'd be a parade in Kiev that the Russians have come. Okay. Well, here's what happened, really. And again, this goes back to the corruption that you have. Supposedly, Putin spent billions of dollars to implement this, okay, to recruit these generals and everything of the sort. Now, he gives it to the Russian generals, to the FSB, et cetera, to bribe these Ukrainian generals to go to the dark side, if you will. And what winds up happening, because of the typical corruption that you're going to have, the FSB and the generals pocketed most of the money, went to Putin and said, look, we've got all these people lined up, everything of the sort, everything's going to be real easy. We've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people that are ready to flip, if you will, over to the Russian side. So Putin starts the insurgents, okay, starts the bombing, everything like that, gets ready for paratroopers to come in. The problem is Putin was blatantly lied to by his intelligence services, by his army, because they didn't have all of the traitors, Ukrainian traitors, that were loyal to Putin, okay? So now when the Russian troops came in, all of a sudden the Ukrainians are fighting back, okay? Putin now has egg on his face all over the place because he was told by his military, by his intelligence service, that the Ukraine military was going to stage a coup against Zelensky, and then Putin would be able to negotiate directly with those generals, you know, that he had basically put in place on his own by bribing them. Okay, and this goes back to the previous president, and bring Ukraine back into the USSR fold. Well, when this all didn't work out, I guess a few days ago from Intel, okay, the generals, some of the deputies, and a bunch of those FSB officers, Army officers that were supposed to be bribing all the Ukrainian generals were arrested. Okay, supposedly there's a huge internal investigation going on, as to what happened. Okay, because Putin is completely pissed off at this point because he was basically set up. Okay, and now the problem is he can't go back, but he can't go forward. And so the war that he thought was going to last 3 days because he had all these sneaky little deals put in the back has now fallen apart. This is what we talked about with Cornered Animal a month ago or so when I talked about it. All right. What he thought was going to happen didn't happen. Putin's a chess player. Okay. He's always thinking 3 moves ahead. This time, it bit him in the ass. And so where he thought this would be real easy, roll into Ukraine, negotiate with the generals, put everybody under, the generals that he placed there, put them all under one control, and poof, everything's done. Too quick for NATO to do anything. Supposedly the Ukrainian people were going to go yay, 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 and there's no big deal. NATO doesn't have to get involved because he thought the Ukrainian people were going to be happy. That's, as has been very well put in the past, the rest of the story. Pinball out.